How many types of functions do we have? So followed by we have library function, user defined function. A function is a named group of statements developed to solve a subproblem and returns a value to the. How many types of functions we have? CLR, SCR antandre, we use this function to clear our screen of previous output. Basically, this is a header file that we use in the C program. Hello everyone, I welcome all of you to the session 1 on functions. Today I'm going to discuss on functions. ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಯಾರು ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರಲ್ಲ ಕರೋನಾ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಾನು ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಏನು ಸರ್ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ? Jokes apart. It's very important session for all of you if you want to become a good programmers. ಹೆಂಗೆ ಸರ್? I will be discussing that in this chapter. Let's start with the weightage of this chapter. Though the weightage looks very small, you will have only one question from 2 marks, but you have a very interesting content in this chapter. Tumba kalitira if you want to become a good programmer, so you need to understand this chapter from scratch with the basics. Let me start this session for all of you with the content slide. So what is that I'm going to discuss in this session? So I'll be discussing about the functions, different types of functions in the introduction. We have the next topic, that is types of functions. ಎಷ್ಟು ತರ functions ಇದೆ? How many types of functions do we have? So followed by we have library function, user defined function and different header files. This is what I'm going to discuss in today's session. Let me start the session without wasting much of your time. So what is the first thing that I have? I have introduction. So what is that I have in the introduction? Please listen to me. Take a notepad next to you. Write down the keywords, whatever I am going to discuss in the session. That's going to be very helpful for all of you. ನಾನು ಏನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಕೀವರ್ಡ್, ಸೊ ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಮೇಕ್ ಅ ನೋಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಟ್. ಒನ್ಸ್ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಡನ್ ವಿತ್ ದ ಸೆಷನ್, ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಅ ಗ್ಲಾನ್ಸ್, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಮೂವಿಂಗ್ ಆನ್ ಟು ದ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಒನ್. Guys, what is that I have? A function is a named group of statements developed to solve a subproblem and returns a value to other functions when it is called. I will repeat for all of you. Please make a note of it. This is very important. A function is a named group of statements developed to solve a subproblem and returns a value to other functions when it is called. ಏನಂಗಂದ್ರೆ, imagine I have a problem. ಏನು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್? ಸರ್, I need to calculate the addition of two numbers. I need to calculate the addition of two numbers. That is my problem. How do I calculate the addition of two numbers? So for that, imagine I'm going to write the line of codes for that. If I write the line of codes to solve this problem, so I have set of line. For that set of line, can I call the group of statements? Yes, you can call that as a group of statements. Imagine I have written some 4 to 5 lines of code. So these lines will help me to solve this problem. What is the problem? Performing the addition of two numbers is a problem. ಈ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಗೆ ಈ 4 ಲೈನು ನನಗೆ ಸೊಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಈಗ ಈ 4 ಲೈನ್ ನಾನು ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀನಿ? ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀನಿ. ಸೊ ವೆನ್ ಡು ಐ ಕಾಲ್ ದಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಅ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್? ಯಾವಾಗ ನಾನು ಇದನ್ನು ಒಂದು ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಈ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ನೇಮ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಲ್ಲ, ಸೊ ಆಗ ನಾನು ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀನಿ. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ವಿಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ದ ನೇಮ್. ಸೊ ಫೈನ್, ದಿಸ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ವಿಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ದ ನೇಮ್. ವಾಟ್ ಎವರ್ ದ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ I have written the code, so it will perform its task. So after performing that, it returns the result. So you need to observe this diagram. Ee diagram na ನೀವು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಬಿಟ್ರೆ you understood this definition. What is that you have? You have some set of lines. So it is grouped and it has got the name. So when it performs the task, it returns the result. ಈ ಥರ ನನಗೆ ಸುಮಾರು ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಇಲ್ಲೊಂದಿದೆ. ಓಕೆ, ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದಿಸ್. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ನೇಮ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ನ ರಿಟರ್ನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದೂ ಇಟ್ ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಸ್ ಒನ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಟಾಸ್ಕ್. ಈ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡೋ ಟಾಸ್ಕ್ ಈ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ ವಾಟ್ ಎವರ್ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಬೋರ್ಡ್, ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಕಾಲ್ ದಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಅ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್. ಸೊ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಗಾಟ್ ಸಬ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ಸ್. Program has got the subprograms. I can also call the function as subprograms. I'm going to divide the entire program. Whatever I have, this board is an entire program. I'm going to divide this entire program. The entire ಬೋರ್ಡ್ನ ನಾನು ಸಬ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಆಗಿ ಡಿವೈಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಈ ಬೋರ್ಡ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀನಿ? ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಆಗಿ ಕರಿತೀನಿ. The another name for the sub program is what I'm using it as functions. That is what you need to understand. ಏನಂತ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತು ಇವಾಗ? ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ನ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್, ಆ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ನಾನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತೀನಿ. ಆ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಆ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ನೇಮ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಅದೇ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ನೇಮು. ಆ ಕೆಲಸನ ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಮಾಡಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ, ಆ ಟಾಸ್ಕ್ನ ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅದು ಒಂದು ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ನ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ದ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಇಸ್ doing. That is what you need to understand, right? If the programs are complex and lengthy, they can be modularized into sub programs. That is what they explain here. Tumba dod program, it is lengthy program, it is complex program. Andre we break down the main program into small modules. That is what you need to remember. Moving on to the next one, how many types of functions we have? We have mainly two types of functions. Please make a note of this point. How many types of functions we have? We have two types of function. One is user defined function, another one is library function. What exactly this library function, what exactly this user defined function? Let me discuss this in detail in the coming slide. So guys, let me start with the library function first. What exactly the library function is all about? Yavudana ನೀವು library function ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀರಾ? A standard library function is a collection of predefined functions. Please make a note of this. This is what is very, very important. This word now we will be using a many number of times in this session. So please make a note of it. What is that I explained? A library, standard library is a collection of predefined functions. Standard library is a collection of predefined functions. Predefined functions andre enu? If I want to write a program, I will be using a lot of keywords, a lot of functions. Functions like CLR, SCR. Yen sir, CLR, SCR. We have already discussed that in our previous sessions. CLR, SCR antandre, we use this function to clear our screen of previous output. ಏನಂತ ಹೇಳಿದೆ? ಸೊ ನಾನು ಈಗ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ನ ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಆ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆ. ಬಟ್ ನಾನು ಈಗ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಆ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಬೇಡ ನನಗೆ. ಏನೇನು ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಫಾರ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಒನ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ CLR, SCR. ಸೊ ಇಫ್ ಐ ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ದಟ್ CLR, SCR, my output screen will be cleaned. So for that we have already written the program and we have stored it. So that is what we call it as a predefined. Modlene you have defined. So such functions we call it as a predefined. So ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ನೀವು ಮೊದಲೇನೆ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಾ? Because I will be using it frequently. I'll be using it frequently. So whichever the functions that you are using frequently, so ಆ ಥರ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ನ ಮೊದಲೇ ನಾನು ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಪದೇ ಪದೇ I don't have to define. You got my point? So if I'm using that function again and again, I don't have to define. Point number one. Point number two, say for example, CLR, SCR. CLR, SCR na bari just one line alli a function call ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. But if you want to write on your own, it might cross more than 100 lines or it might take n number of lines. So why will I write just to clear the screen? Why will I write n number of lines? ಆ n number of lines ಬರೀ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ. ಬಟ್ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ? ಬರೀ 6 lines ಇದೆ. 6 lines ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಬರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು 60 lines ಬರೀ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಬರೆಯೋಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತಾ? ನೋ. ಸೊ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಟು ಅವಾಯ್ಡ್ ದ ಲೆಂತ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಅಡ್ವಾಂಟೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್. ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? ಸೊ ಫಸ್ಟೇನೆ ನಾವು ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ? ಒಂದು ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಆ ಜಾಗ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಲೈಬ್ರರಿ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಫೈನ್, ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಲೈಬ್ರರಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯಿತು, ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯಿತು. ಯಾಕೆ ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಿ? ಟು ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ದ ಎಫರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ರೈಟಿಂಗ್ ದ ಕೋಡ್ ಅಗೇನ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅಗೇನ್, ಟು ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ದ ಲೆಂತ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್, ವಿ ಆರ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ದ ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್. We understood this point also. Then how do we use this predefined functions? To use that predefined functions, we have something called header files. We have something called header files. Only if you call that header files, you will be using that predefined functions. Sir, answer header file. So in the previous class, we have already discussed something called #include conio.h. Howda? So we have discussed #include stdio.h. Howdu. So this we use it in the C programming. #include iostream.h. All these things we have discussed in the previous session. This is what I will call it as header files. Sir, ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಈ header files ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? We have some set of predefined functions. I have grouped and I have stored it in different header files. Here, for example, let's take an example, small example. Imagine I have first standard to 10th standard. I have the marks card, that is grade sheets of first standard, second standard, third standard, fourth standard to 10th standard. ನನಗೇನು ಬೇಕು? ನನಗೆ ಫೋರ್ತ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಬೇಕು. ಒಬ್ಬ ರವಿ ಅಂತ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ. ಸೊ ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ I have a student called Ravi in 4th standard. I want the grade sheets of that Ravi who is studying in 4th standard. Imagine I don't have the folders like first standard, second standard, third standard, fourth standard. Everything is mixed. And I need to take out the marks card of the 4th standard student who is Ravi. Is it easy for me to search? ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಸೊ ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲ ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. So is it easy, or I will make a folder, I will make a files. First standard ದೇ ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ದೇ ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಥರ್ಡ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ದೇ ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಯಿತು, ನಾನು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಬರೀ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ತಗೋತೀನಿ. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡಲ್ಲಿ 60 ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಬರೀ 60 ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ತಗೋತೀನಿ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ್ದು ಬೇಕೋ ಅದನ್ನು ಎತ್ಕೋತೀನಿ. ಇದು ಈಸಿನಾ ಅಥವಾ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಟು ಫೋರ್ತ್ ಎಲ್ಲರನ್ನೂ ತಗೊಂಡು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಡ್ಕೋದು ಈಸಿನಾ? So the first one is easy. The same way I have the students are the predefined functions. So ನನಗೆ ಯಾವ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಬೇಕು ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಕ್ಯಾಟಗರಿ ವೈಸ್, ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ವೈಸ್, ಫಂಕ್ಷನಾಲಿಟಿ ವೈಸ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನು ನಾನು ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟೋರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀನಿ. ಸೊ ನನಗೆ ಯಾವ್ದು ಬೇಕೋ ಆ ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತೀನಿ. ಇಫ್ ಐ ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ದೆನ್ ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ predefined function, otherwise I cannot. That is what you need to remember. So fine, you understood that ಯಾವ ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲ್ನ ನಾನು ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಲ್ಲಿ, ಓನ್ಲಿ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಇಟ್. ಯಾವುದೆಲ್ಲ ಈ ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟೋರ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಲ್ಲಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಲ್ಲಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಎ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್. ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ 2 ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್. ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ? 2 ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಒಬ್ಬನ ಹತ್ರ ಲ್ಯಾಂಬರ್ಗಿನಿ ಇದೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬನ ಹತ್ರ ಫೆರಾರಿ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಆ ಲ್ಯಾಂಬರ್ಗಿನಿಗೂ ನಾನು ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ಫೆರಾರಿಗೂ ನಾನು ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಸ್ಟಿಲ್ ನಾನು ಅವನ ಫ್ರೆಂಡು, ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಯೂಸ್ ದಟ್ ಕಾರ್. ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬನ ಹತ್ರ ಅಂಬಾಸಿಡರ್ ಇದೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಫಿಯೇಟ್ ಇದೆ. ಅಂಬಾಸಿಡರ್ಗೂ ನಾನು ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ಫಿಯೇಟ್ಗೂ ನಾನು ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ನಾನು ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಯೂಸ್ ದಟ್ ಕಾರ್ಸ್. ಬಟ್ ಈಗ ಹೆಂಗಾಗತ್ತೆ, ಆ ಕಾರ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಅವ್ನು ನನ್ನ ಜೊತೆಲಿ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಆ ಕಾರ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಲ್ಯಾಂಬರ್ಗಿನಿ ಅಥವಾ ಫೆರಾರಿನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅವನು ನನ್ನ ಜೊತೆ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಆಗಲೇ ನಾನು ಆ ಕಾರ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗೋದು. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಯು ನೀಡ್ ಟು ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್. ಸೊ ಮೈ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲ್. ಮೈ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಗಾಟ್ 2 cars. ದ 2 cars ಆರ್ ದ predefined functions that I have stored in that particular header file. If I want to use that predefined functions, I have to have him with me. So that is what you need to remember, right? So guys, moving on to the next one, user-defined functions. What is this user-defined functions, sir? You told us we have many predefined functions. Of course, we have multiple predefined functions. But adralli nanage bekagiradu illde irbodu. So my program, whatever I am writing, so maybe I might not have that function in the predefined group. So for that, the programming language is giving the privilege to you to create your own programs, your own functions. Who are you? You are the user. That's why we call that as a user-defined functions. If you are defining the function, then I will call that as a user-defined functions. So that is one of the advantage that we have. So we can create our own functions or subprograms to solve our problems. Such functions are normally referred as user-defined functions. User-defined functions is a complete and independent program which can be used by the main program. This is very, very important. Whatever the programs that you are, whatever the subprograms that you are defining, so that is independent. That is independent and it can be used by the main program. So if you are writing the subprogram, make sure that the program is performing one single task and it has got no dependency with any other programs. That's why I will call that as a independent. That's why I will call it as a independent. So if, for example, nan maneinda il college ge barbeku antandre, suppose if I am dependent on my father, ನನ್ನ ಡ್ಯಾಡಿ ನನ್ನ ಡ್ರಾಪ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ ಆನ್ ಹಿಮ್, ಸೊ ಐ ಆಮ್ ನಾಟ್ ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್. ಸೊ ಅವ್ರು ಯಾವಾಗ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಆಗಲೇ ನಾನು ಬರಬೇಕು, ನಾನು ರೆಡಿಯಾಗಿದ್ರು ನಾನು ಬರೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಇನ್ ದ ಸೇಮ್ ವೇ ಇಫ್ ಐ ಆಮ್ ನಾಟ್ ಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ ಆನ್ ಹಿಮ್, ನಾನು ಯಾವಾಗ ರೆಡಿ ಆಗ್ತೀನಿ ಅವಾಗ ಬಂದುಬಿಟ್ರೆ, ಸೊ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್. ಸೊ ಇಫ್ ಐ ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು execute something, I need some input from other function. So this function is dependent on this function, then I will not call that as independent. That is very important that you need to understand. The user-defined functions should be independent, right? The user-defined functions are written to perform a definite calculations and perform their task. They send back the result to the calling function. What is the meaning of the third statement? ನಾನು ಏನೇ ಒಂದು ಕ್ಯಾಲ್ಕುಲೇಷನ್ಸ್ನ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ I will call that function. I'll ask that function. Say for example, I have written the function to perform the addition of two numbers. I've passed the number, right? The function will calculate the result and it will give it back to me. Yaru keliddu, nan keliddu, so tago nan calculate madidini result. So it will give it back to me. So that is what you need to understand. The user defined function will calculate and it will give the result back to the calling function. Yar call madutare, so for them it will give it back. That is what you need to understand, right? Different header files that we have. So I would like to give you the glance of different header files that we use. So under this category, we have different header files. We have mentioned some of the functions, predefined functions, which comes under this header file. Let me not explain all these things to you because we have a detailed chapter in the coming classes. So then let me take an example and explain the usage of these functions. ನನಗೆ 4ರಿಂದ 5 ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲ್ಸ್ ನಾನು ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಈಚ್ ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲ್ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಲಿಸ್ಟೆಡ್ ಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್, ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್, ಯಾವ ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ನು ಯಾವ ಹೆಡರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಲೆಟ್ ಮೀ ನಾಟ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಇನ್ ಡೀಟೇಲ್. ಸೊ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ರೀಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ರೈಟ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಇಫ್ ಐ ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೈನ್ ದಟ್, ಐ ನೀಡ್ ಟು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೈನ್ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಯೂಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಫೈಲ್ಸ್, ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಫೈಲ್ಸ್, how do I perform the operation with files, adanella I need to explain. Let me not dump all those things to you. You just have to understand, if I take the header file that is iostream.h, all these things will come under the iostream.h. That is what you need to understand, right? So let's have a quick look. I have the iostream.h. Suppose if I have the iostream.h, all these predefined functions are grouped under iostream. So all these things I will be using with the file handling. Suppose if I want to perform any operations with respect to files, I will be using all these functions. I'll be using all these functions: open, close, seek, tell. All these functions will be dealing with files. That is what you need to understand. If you are performing any operations, if you are using any operations with respect to files, make sure that you will include #iostream.h header file in your program. If you don't have that, so you will not be able to use any of these functions, is what I would like to tell all of you at this point of time, right? Moving on to the next one, I have stdio.h. Basically, this is a header file that we use in a C program. ನಾನು ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಸೊ ಈ ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲು ನಾವು ಸಿ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಲ್ಲಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಚೆಕ್ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್. Again, we have the functions which is predefined for files. That's what we call it as a fopen, fclose, printf, all those things, which is grouped under this header file. But one thing you need to observe, a very important point. So suppose if I call iostream.h in C++, automatically the content whatever I have in the stdio.h will be called. That is what you need to understand. What did I say? Please observe here, when we include the header file, that is iostream.h, the header file studio.h, that is stdio.h, is automatically included into our program, is what you need to understand, right? So moving on to the next one, we have string.h. What is string? String is a group of characters. Can I call this as a string? If I give double quotes, can I call this as a string? Yes, sir. Of course, you can call this as a string. It is a group of characters. What is the meaning of group of characters? I have more than one character. That's why I will call it as a group of character. Can I call this as a string? Yes, you can call this as a string. I have some of the predefined functions which help me to perform many operations with respect to strings. ಈಗ ಸ್ಟ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಲೆಂತ್ನ ನಾನು ಕ್ಯಾಲ್ಕುಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಈ ಸ್ಟ್ರಿಂಗ್ನ ಈ ಸ್ಟ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಜೊತೆ ಆ್ಯಡ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಈ ಸ್ಟ್ರಿಂಗ್ನ ನಾನು ರಿವರ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಈ ಸ್ಟ್ರಿಂಗ್ನ ಈ ಸ್ಟ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಜೊತೆ ಕಂಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಫಾರ್ ಆಲ್ ದೋಸ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಯು ಡೋಂಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ರೈಟ್ ದ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್. So it is already predefined. I will be discussing this in detail in the coming session. You have this in your syllabus. So this, if you want to use this functions, make sure that you include this header file in your program. So this is what you need to understand in this slide. And then the same way I have standard library.h. So I have some of the functions which is related to memory, allocate, reallocate, all those things I will be using. Reallocate, memory allocate, calloc. So all these things deals with memory. So it will allocate the memory to your program based on your requirement dynamically. And also you have some of the conversions into string. All those things will happen with this, guys. So if you want to use all those things, make sure that you will be using this header file. Again, we will be discussing this in detail with a different chapter, but just have an idea that if you want to use this kind of things, this kind of predefined functions, you have to include this header file, that is standard library.h. The next important thing that you have to listen is IO manip. IO manip. See, for example, I have input and output. Okay, I need to format my output. This is how it should come. In one line I should print. From one character to another character, I should give one space. What should be the word length? What should I give the space between one character to another character? So how many precisions I should have? Say for example, my output is 10.35. So how many floating numbers I should have? All those formatting things of your output will be done with the help of these predefined functions. If you want to deal with that, so make sure that you include this header file. Right? The next important thing is math.h. Probably you will get an idea here what I was archkota idde ishtottu yadru bagge anta. Listen to me carefully. If I want to calculate the square of a given number, yen calculate ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? 2 to the power of 2 ಅಂತ ಇದೆ. ಹೆಂಗೆ ಕ್ಯಾಲ್ಕುಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? 2 to the power of 2 ನ 2 into 2 ಅಂತ ಕ್ಯಾಲ್ಕುಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ. ಸೊ ಈಗ 2 to the power of 8 ಅಂತ ಬರೀತೀನಿ. 2 into 2 into 2 into ಬರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಬಟ್ ಇದನ್ನ ಈಸಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಹೆಂಗೆ? a is equal to power of 2, 2. ಏನು ಸರ್ ಇದು? ನೀವು ಶುದ್ಧ ಬರೆಯೋದನ್ನ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ರೈಟಿಂಗ್ ಇಟ್ ಇನ್ ಒನ್ ಸಿಂಗಲ್ ಲೈನ್. ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ 2 to the power of 2, 2 to the power of 3, 2 to the power of 4. If I just mention, I'll get the result from this function and I will store it in this variable. Our result to a alli store ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. Am I reducing the effort? Am I reducing the length? So ಯಾವುದೇ mathematical operations, predefined functions na ನೀವು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ first of all you have to include this header file, that is math.h. ಯಾವುದನ್ನ ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? math.h. ಏನು ಸರ್ ನೀವು ಈಗ ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲ್ ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ವಲ್ಲ? ಲಿಸನ್ ಟು ಮೀ ಕೇರ್ಫುಲಿ. ನೀವು ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ನ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಏನಂತ ಬರೀತೀರಾ? #include conio.h. #include conio.h. ಸೊ ನಾನು ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ conio.h ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿದೆ ಅಂತ. #include iostream.h ಅಂತ ನೀವು ಬರೀತೀರಾ. #include iostream.h. ಆಯಿತು. ಮ್ಯಾಥಮೆಟಿಕಲ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್, ಪ್ರೀಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಏನಾದರೂ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಫಸ್ಟು ನೀವು ಆ ಹೆಡರ್ ಫೈಲ್ನ ನೀವು ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ ಮಾಡಿರಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನು ನಾನು ಈ ಥರ ಬರಿತೀನಿ math.h. Only then you can use all the mathematical functions. ಏನು ಸರ್ ಬರೀ ಇಷ್ಟನೇ ಇರೋದು? ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ತುಂಬ ಇದೆ. Just have to go through it. ತುಂಬ ಇದೆ. ಸೀಲ್, ಫ್ಲೋರ್, ಟ್ಯಾನ್, ಕಾಸ್, ಸೀಕೆಂಟ್, ಕೊಸಿಕೆಂಟ್, ಲಾಗ್, ತುಂಬ ಇದೆ. I have listed only few here for all of you just to explain how exactly math.h is working. ಇದೇ ಥರ whatever I have done here, you have to do that previous header file also. The same thing you have to do. IO stream ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಲೈಬ್ರರಿ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, all those things you should know. If you're using any of the function, make sure that you have included your header file. Hope you understood here. So with this, I have come to an end of today's session by discussing or by doing a function even in this corona, right? So guys, see you in the next session. So go back and check and list out different header files that I have discussed. So let me meet you in the next session. Till then, take care of your health. Love you all. Bye bye. Is working. ಇದೇ ಥರ whatever I have done here, you have to do that previous header file also. The same thing you have to do. IO stream ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ ಲೈಬ್ರರಿ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, all those things you should know. If you're using any of the function, make sure that you have included your header file. Hope you understood here. So with this, I have come to an end of today's session by discussing or by doing a function even in this corona, right? So guys, see you in the next session. So go back and check and list out different header files that I have discussed. So let me meet you in the next session. Till then, take care of your health. Love you all. Bye bye. Session. Till then, take care of your health. Love you all. Bye bye.